Welcome to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. Legal issues simplified through real client stories and real-world experiences. Creating simplicity in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to another episode of Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd.
As a business and healthcare law firm, details matter. This season's theme is Zoom In. Once we know our big picture, vision, or strategy, we have to roll up our sleeves to get the work done. With each episode this season, we will have our typical stories and make sure we talk about specific actions to focus on for 2022.
Michael, have you ever heard the expression, the second time is a charm?
No, and I know what you're doing there. The actual expression is third time's a charm.
All right, you got me there.
You're trying to shoehorn in an expression so that you could make the point that this is the first time we're having an outside guest on for a second time.
That's correct. You got me there. I was trying to keep things, close to the chest.
Okay, yeah. See what you're doing, dad joke and all. But seriously, I love the Yogi Berra misused expressions. They make me laugh every time I hear someone use them, and my wife, who's a very smart person, does it all the time. But Brad, it is actually, you keep things close to the vest.
Yes, you got me there. Yeah, it actually comes back from poker, if you can believe that, because you used to keep your cards close to your vest, and is the expression to keep, obviously, your cards secret. And over time, people kept switching it from vest to chest. And I wonder, Michael, is that because people don't wear a vest anymore? Maybe they do, or I'm not sure. But what is your favorite misused expression?
Well, that's easy because I'm a 13-year-old boy at heart. It's when people say nip it in the butt. I hear that all the time instead of nip it in the bud. And they mean it the same way, which is to halt something early on. But the true origin of the expression comes from, based on debudding plants.
Yeah, I could, knowing that you are a man, but you are really a teenager at heart, I could see you going crazy with the word butt.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I heard it just a few weeks ago on a local radio station, and the guy said it a few times, nip it in the butt, and I was laughing the whole way in just because he was misusing it.
Yeah, well, that goes back to, as you said, you like Yogi Berra. There's so many good Yogi Berra comments, but, one of them would be, we made too many wrong mistakes.
Yes, very profound, Brad. Let's get on with it. Let's get our guest on before we go too far with this one.
Yeah.
So our buddy is joining us today. Our longtime friend and client, Grant Stevens, is coming on for the second time.
Second time.
Grant is a plastic surgeon to the stars, leader among his peers. When you go to a plastic surgery conference, you can easily find Grant because there seems to just be almost like a spotlight following him around with a horde of people nearby.
Yes.
Grant is a proud University of Oregon graduate. He went to WashU School of Medicine. He he founded the Marina Aesthetic Surgery Fellowship. He was and I'm not sure if he's still active as the USC Division of Aesthetic Surgery, but he was a mainstay with that for many years, past president of the Aesthetic Society, and has published countless scientific research articles to better the field of plastic surgery. And most importantly for today's episode, for what we're going to be talking about, he has his own podcast that's amazing called The Technology of Beauty. Grant, welcome.
Thank you, gentlemen, for having me. I appreciate this second opportunity to be on your show.
Yeah, and I don't know if we should be jealous of Grant's studio or not. For the TV audience who's watching this, Grant's outdoing us in the studio. So, Michael, I definitely think we need to up our budget because it's a pretty nice-looking studio you got there, Grant.
Well, thank you. This is the home of the Technology of Beauty, where I get to interview the movers and shakers of the beauty business.
We're going to get to that one. Well, again, we're excited to have you back for the second time. Over the years, we've had these great, cool conversations just with you about a lot of different things. But today, we're going to really focus on your relationship with technology. And when I was preparing for today, I actually started thinking that you and my dad would get along great. When my dad was a young physician, his nickname became Gadget Man. because he loved all these different type of medical devices. He was one of the first ones in New Orleans to get an MRI and CT machines, and he was one of the first one to go to digital MRI. Like, there were so many things I started thinking. It's like, gosh, if Grant and my dad got in the room, now you would not understand a word he said, Grant, because you think I talk fast. He talks fast and stutters, so it's you wouldn't understand anything. But I kept thinking about your love for technology, and it made me think of my dad today. But let's talk about, you have that podcast called the Technology of Beauty. And as your attorneys, we know that's also the name of your practice that you've used many years. Tell us how you got interested in technology. What started that?
Well, when I think back in my early training, even in medical school, I was sort of captivated by technologies just in general. And then lasers started coming out. And in the early 80s, I was able to start playing around, just messing around with lasers in the lab and so forth. And then in 1983, I got to actually use a pulse dye laser on a port wine stain, a vascular issue on a patient. And I just was amazed at the ability of non-surgical intervention to actually change a person's life. And then I started studying about lasers and wavelengths and then energy-based technologies. I was just captivated by it. I went into practice in 86 and soon thereafter started a med spa, and I had professors telling me that I was a surgeon. What was I doing? What was I doing with these needles and topicals and so forth? And I can remember Dr. Zerum, Harvey Zerum, God rest his soul. I remember him calling me, and he was one of my mentors and past chair at UCLA. And he said, "Grant, you're a surgeon. You're not a dermatologist." And I said, "Dr. Zerum, I'm just trying to optimize the skin of my patients and help people in every way, not just surgically." So in any event, I was always swimming a little upstream on the non-surgical stuff. And then eventually my specialty caught up with me.
And you probably have one of the OG med spas. Of course, they weren't called med spas until the last, dozen years at most.
Yeah. And I remember why I did it. I had done my mother's facelift, and she was a Southern Californian. Mom, please forgive me for admitting it, but she's not going to sue me for HIPAA, I don't think. She looked great. Everything was done properly. I was very proud of the job I did. But one of my brothers said, "I thought you were going to get rid of Mom's wrinkles." And I said, "No, I did a facelift. I tightened up her neck and her jaw and on and on." He goes, "I thought you're supposed to get rid of wrinkles with a facelift." And I had gotten rid of some of them, the ones I removed, but the skin itself wasn't smoother per se. And I got to thinking about that. And then I thought, what can I do to optimize the skin of these patients? And I coined the phrase, the icing on the cake. And I started developing different approaches, both before surgery, during surgery, and after surgery, and then embracing various technologies, topicals and energy-based, to optimize it. And now we talk about the icing on the cake with all of our patients, and we throw it in as a complimentary service to all of our facial rejuvenation surgical patients. And I talk about optimizing the paint job, because you take your car into the shop, they get the dents out and they fix the body work, but they always paint the car and they give it to you all nice and shiny and painted. But as plastic surgeons, before we were optimizing the skin with various modalities, we would give the patient back and they'd still have brown spots or red spots or tiny wrinkles or photo aging and the various things on the paint job, if you will. And now by incorporating that into the plastic surgery practice as a part of the surgical regimen, patients are optimized and they look a lot better.
That's amazing. And you, a lot of what you do for the optimize or the icing on the cake is technology-based stuff. Has that changed over the years on what you use? Oh
yeah, it's changed a lot. In the old days when we just had the first few lasers, like CO2 full field lasers, it was like torching the face. But it has become so much more refined. And when people say something, they use the word laser like there's one, like, "Oh, I can't have a laser because of X or Y." I always say, look, if I say car, you could think of a Volkswagen or a Yugo, or you could think of a Lamborghini. They're both cars, but they're totally different. Or if I say transportation, A skateboard is a form of transportation, but so is a space shuttle. But they have very little to do with one another. They are forms of transportation. Lasers are that varied. And whether or not it's fractionated or full field or ablative or non-ablative, and what the wavelength is, what the target is, in other words, the color, and that's how lasers work. And it's beyond the scope of this program, but lasers are far more effective, far more gentle, and yet far more effective. So imagine that, less downtime and more effectiveness. So but it's not just lasers. It's using radio frequency, using ultrasound, other energy-based devices to optimize, lift, rejuvenate, clarify the skin.
Amazing. Well, your passion for this topic is palpable. That's awesome. So, obviously, we mentioned earlier that you were a past president for the Aesthetic Society, and one of the many things that you were known for leading up to and during your leadership was your relationship with industry. And I'd like to that obviously connects so deeply to this idea of the beauty of technology, your podcast. I'd love to just hear a little more about what you saw with what industry does to support your specialty.
Thank you, Michael. Industry is our friend, in my opinion. First of all, I'm a serial entrepreneur and have been since I was 4 years old when I started my first tomato route and then egg route. And I'm a capitalist, and I'm an unembarrassed capitalist and entrepreneur who happened to go to medical school. I also am passionate about being a physician, but I don't think they're mutually exclusive. And I know some of the socialists amongst us somehow think that to be an entrepreneur and a capitalist is somehow contrarian to being a physician. I couldn't disagree more. Without industry, we do not have new products, new goods, new services, new technologies, because it takes capital and it takes risk to try to develop new technologies. And I've always been fond of industry because they take the risk, they take the time, they spend the money to help us with new products. And that's why we have better fillers, better modulators, and better technologies that I just referred to. So given that, I've embraced industry my entire career. And to that end, with the Aesthetic Society, I was actually the chairman of the Industry Relations Committee. I was chair of the Exhibits Committee. I spent a lot of time developing and nurturing relationships with these big industries and small emerging industries. I went around and met every one of them, from the small startups to the giant Allergans of the world, now AbbVie, if you will. And not only that, with the Aesthetic Society, we started partnering with industry, because industry also is a great partner in terms of our pursuits of patient education, doctor education, and patient safety. And I'm happy to report that now we have 12 industry partners, premier partners. When we started, we had one, and we've been getting larger and larger. During my presidency, we added 4 more. We went from 8 to 12, and they give us financial contributions towards education and to facilitate residents and fellows coming to our meetings and educating patients about safety and effectiveness in the aesthetic pursuits, both medical and surgically. So I'm passionate about partnering with industry because I think responsible industry is healthy for as physicians and healthy for our industry. It's that commitment to patient safety and optimization by industry that helps us with our members. So I'm a friend of industry, and out of that grew the technology of beauty. And I have a lot of industry CEOs and giants on the podcast, as you know, as well as some physicians. And we bring some of the top flight aesthetic physicians onto the program also.
I heard there's a rumor that you brought on 2 attorneys once.
Yes, the 2 of you.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And you're not only my attorney, but you're the attorneys for many of my friends, my previous fellows, some businesses that I work with, such as Orange Twist. You guys are the best and brightest in the business, and that is why I recommend you to anyone that asks me about it. And I noticed you quoted me at AmSpa Brad, I noticed you have a quote at the bottom of that AmSpa thing. That's something that I said. I don't know exactly what the quote is now. But
we're always recording you just in case.
Just in case.
Including right now.
Yes. We never know when something brilliant's coming out of Grant's mouth. Well, and let's you talked a little bit about it, but for our audience that's listening, and again, we did have the chance to be on your podcast, but I love the fact, you have this passion obviously coming through, which everyone can hear as you talk about it, but this passion for technology, passion for the industry itself. And it's all seems to be coming great or beautifully through the Technology of Beauty podcast. Anything else you want to add on to what you were just talking about?
Not really. I'm sure something will come up.
Yes.
We're doing a lot of things, working with a number of companies. Right now, I'm working with a company called Engage Technologies, and they asked me if I would help them out as the Chief Medical Information Officer. They're out of Boise, and it's a novel form of communication, both from physicians to patients and from staff to patients and industry to industry and industry to doctors. It's a whole new emerging form of communication. And I'm really excited about that. It's not just an aesthetics business. It's also in ocular and dental and other medical things such as spine and hip and knee replacements. And I think it's going to be a way which we communicate even in the legal business. I think it will become used in law and real estate and veterinary science and all sorts of other fields.
I've heard you describe it almost like, frictionless education or frictionless communication.
Yeah, it is. I have called it frictionless education, frictionless, communication. I would ask you and all your listeners to, how many of you don't have your cell phone within your arm's length? Here's mine, sitting right here on the table.
Yeah.
This is our most trusted device, it seems, that we're all, when you misplace it, you panic. And I'm sure there are very few people listening to me right now that don't have their cell phone on them, or probably listening to me right now on their cell phone. That's number one. Number two is almost all of us prefer text messaging over anything. We are so over emails. We've been spammed to death and invaded in our emails, and we even prefer text over speaking on the phone, most of us. I'll never forget when my daughter texted me while sitting next to me at the dinner table. And it was before I fell in love with text, but I remember giving her some grief about it. And now I realize I do the same thing. I'm in the same room as somebody, and sometimes I'll text them. So if this is our beloved device and we like text for communication, wouldn't it be nice to seamlessly be able to text? Because the other thing, I think there's nobody on this program who likes their passcodes. I always forget my passcode, and maybe you two don't, but I certainly do. And I have to then go look it up and so on and so forth. I hate having to put in passcodes. Well, with the Engage Technologies approach, it's seamless. There are no passcodes. You can get off of it just by hitting no if you want. You get on it with a QR code or a 4-digit code on text messaging. And then you have information flowing at you in short drips. The other thing is we don't like long videos. People don't even like this answer I'm giving because it's too long-winded. People want 60-second, 90-second little drips. And that's what Engage does, and Engage Technologies. And you'll hear more and more about it. I believe it's going to be the future of frictionless communication.
And Grant, before we jump to the next company, I'm just curious, I'm sure the audience is too, how do you find a technology like that? Do they come out and reach out to you, or are you just constantly, because you're so involved in the industry, you hear about it, you seek them out? Is it kind of, which way does it go? They come to you or you find them?
It goes both directions. In this case, they wanted to go into aesthetics. They'd already done dental and ocular and some medical stuff, and they asked around and they spoke to people in the business, in the industry, if you will, and my name kept coming up. And then they called me, and I thought it was too good to be true, challenged them to come here to LA. They came here across the street from where I'm talking to you. I'm in Manhattan Beach right now. I brought my lawyer, and I brought my banker and a couple other people into the room. I wanted to hear their presentation, and I frankly was blown away and remain over a year later equally blown away at this exciting form of communication. So to answer your question, Brad, they sought me out. And that's generally what's happening now.
Yeah.
But there are a few technologies I'm working with now that I heard about, and I went after them.
Wow.
Because I thought, if you could deliver molecules through the skin and get blood levels of chemicals through the skin and throw away a needle, that sounds pretty unbelievable and pretty exciting. So that, I went after that one and so forth. So it's a two-way street, Brad. But
Gotcha.
Lately, it's been more they're reaching out to me.
And so now we've talked about this new type of media platform. Let's move over to cybersecurity. Tell us about Critica Security.
Yeah, well, first, I hope that none of you have ever had a cyber attack of the nature I had, but I had a very significant cyber attack. Mm-hmm. And yes, for all of the doubters, I owned all of the technologies you had. I had Norton. I had everything you have. But when they want to break in, they can. I mean, Microsoft had a cyber attack. And you think any of you have what Microsoft has? States have been broken into, hospital systems, and so forth, and on and on. The petroleum industry, gaming, and people who have all kinds of built-in protection. And the problem is with these cyber hackers and cyber attackers is they invade your computer and with a spider. And that spider sits there, and they have what's called a dwell time as it's getting information from that one device, and then it moves on through your system to the other devices. And it can do it through the cloud. It can even come through your Philips light bulb, believe it or not. And it creeps around, and it gets all of your information. In my case, the dwell time was 67 days. The average dwell time before attack is now almost 200 days. So it's 180, 170 days. That means it's sitting there. And these zero-time attacks, what happens is it's been sitting there, and when they attack you, they don't have a previous harmful virus that they attack you with. So the Norton, I'm not picking on Norton, all the other devices spot known spiders, known attackers, if you will. They recognize an enemy, and then they alert you. You have an enemy, but they first have to recognize the enemy, and that's what they're built on historical enemies, not on zero-time attackers. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I know too much about this lately. Well, I was attacked. And when I was attacked, one by one, sequentially, 38 computers went dark. But not before money was being transferred out of my personal bank account overseas. All of my photos were taken. Everything was hijacked. And I was shut down. I was reduced to a day timer and pencils. I didn't know who had scheduled, who had paid, what was happening tomorrow, what was happening next hour. Imagine your world being shut down in whatever job you're in. It was terrifying, I have to tell you. I didn't think it could be that bad. Within a week or less, I had 2 U.S. FBI agents. I had a hostage negotiator and 4 or 5 other people brought by the insurance carrier that I happened to have at that time that helped me so much. I was asked to provide over $500,000 of Bitcoins to get back some of my information. We had to negotiate that down. I spent nearly $1 million positioning and reprogramming everything and obtaining things. It was absolutely the worst time for my business. And thankfully, we did get everything back, to my knowledge. And I was forever affected by the whole concept of cybersecurity. Since then, I know of 2 plastic surgeons who have gone bankrupt over it. I know of 3 others that have been attacked. They are not bankrupt. And now I've been giving some talks about it. And fortunately, one talk, somebody heard me talking about it and came to me from a company called Critica. And Critica has a technology that allows early detection and early warning. Had I known within a minute that I had been attacked, I could have killed the computer, just taken it off my system. And that would have ended everything right then. My bank accounts wouldn't have been invaded. My emails wouldn't have been invaded. It would have ended the whole thing. I've just thrown it in the trash or just destroyed it. Now, you don't have to necessarily do that. There are other things you can do once you know you're attacked. And there are companies that do that. That's not the role of Critica. Critica is early detection and warning. And no, it doesn't exist yet. But with Critica, it does. And they are in the University of Nevada with the gaming industry. You can imagine the gaming industry is very interested in this technology. And it's being written now in Word, and it is in another language right now that escapes me. But I'm very interested in this technology. I've been asked to be on their board. I frequently am asked to share my own experiences, and I've given you, believe it or not, an abbreviated version of my experiences. But I'm really excited about the future with Critica. And I think it is the first answer, because if you can't protect yourself unless you know you've been attacked. So an early detection leads to protection. So that's what we're looking for, early detection and warning system.
That's really cool. Well, as we wind up our episode today, we get to turn the tables on you, Grant, because we've been a guest on your show before, and you famously asked your guests at the end of each of your episodes to look into the crystal ball and talk about what they see in the future of aesthetics, and we want to hear what you see in the crystal ball for technology.
Thank you. I think that one can look into the future by looking back into the past and what's happened. And I see an interest in non-surgical and minimally invasive procedures, and I think that's going to continue. It's growing exponentially. So in general, from 40,000 feet, I think we're going to see more and more development in the field of minimally invasive and non-surgical procedures. I also think there's going to be more research and development in the field of body as opposed to face. Face will continue to advance, but we've made huge headway and strides in facial rejuvenation. I think we're going to see some of the chronic problems with the body approach, and they will be things like cellulite, stretch marks, and skin laxity, non-surgical skin tightening, and then finally also more development in fat reduction. It will be based on energy. I'm not sure what that energy will be. I'm sure it'll be a combination of things such as radio frequency, ultrasound, radiation, cold as in cryotherapy, and of course lasers. There'll be other technologies. I'm aware of a few coming down the pipe right now for cellulite that haven't been announced. So that's where I think the future will lie. And then novel forms of communication, which leads to education. And I think COVID has taught us that in terms of, look at how much time we spend now on Zoom calls, as we're doing right now. And yet, if you had asked me about Zoom 2 years ago, I wouldn't know what you were talking about. So I think distant learning, remote learning will also flourish. And that'll be also teaching physicians and teaching physician extenders how to do certain things. There'll be a lot of remote learning, and that's where something like Engage will come in. And also education of patients, just what's available. And patients are demanding more effective treatments with less downtime. And that's what I see happening.
Well, I think Brad was actually right. I hope this isn't being recorded. The second time was a charm. So it was awesome having you on again, Grant. And we look forward to the third time in the future. What we'll do next is we will let you go. We'll break for commercial, and on the other side, Brad and I will talk about our legal observations on technology and healthcare. But until next time, Grant, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much to both of you. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show, and I look forward to having you back on my show, The Technology of Beauty.
Love it.
Many business owners use legal counsel as a last resort rather than as a proactive tool that can further their success. Why? For most, it's the fear of unknown legal costs. ByrdAdatto's Access Plus program makes it possible for you to get the ongoing legal assistance you need for one predictable monthly fee. That gives you unlimited phone and email access to the legal team, so you can receive feedback on legal concerns as they arise. Access Plus. a smarter, simpler way to access legal services. Find out more. Visit ByrdAdatto.com today.
Welcome back to the Legal 123's The ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd. Michael, always love having Grant on with us. And man, he has so much information to provide in such a short period of time. And it really was, I thought, fascinating about technology is advancing so fast that, you know, he was talking about freezing the fat or using different ways. Let's talk about the legal impact, though. Let's zoom in here and get into the details as to how does the law handle all these technologies?
Well, that's the crazy thing, and probably the zoom in is to just evaluate, if you're a medical practice, what are the newer technologies that you have, and, you know, take something like even this communication system that Grant was talking about with Engage Media, and making sure if you have some alternative form of communication that you look at, do you have the right patient consent? Is it HIPAA compliant? Are you safeguarding your information? Or if you have devices, you know, understanding, are those devices considered medical or are they considered non-medical devices? Because it impacts kind of compliance at its broadest form. It impacts compliance. And I'd love to hear kind of your zoom-in thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, so the details matter with technology, and it's not only is it a medical device and how your state views it, but who can actually then use that medical device. Unfortunately, there's a lot of assumptions that, you know, anyone can be trained to use it does not mean anyone can actually use it. And so there's as much as we love industry, as Grant was saying, it's tough because in some states, someone can fire a laser who's not a physician or even an RN. In other states, they have requirements because it's a medical procedure. Only those certain medically trained individuals who are licensed can do that. So it's not technology has allowed a lot of people to enter into the cosmetic and aesthetic world, which is amazing and wonderful. But just be really careful as you approach that. And hit the pause button, get those details, because it'd be really silly for you to spend $100,000 to $200,000 for a machine that turns out, number one, you can't own, or the people you were going to employ to fire off that machine can't use it.
Yeah, I mean, I would just end it with this. Butchered expressions are really funny. Butchered use of technology from a compliance perspective, not funny.
Totally agree with that. And join us next Wednesday for our show in which we're going to discuss technology in the medical industry again with our special guest, Ryan Miller, the CEO of Aetna Interactive. Thanks again for joining us today. And remember, if you like this episode, please subscribe, make sure to give us a 5-star rating, and share with your friends.
You can also sign up for the ByrdAdatto newsletter by going to our website at ByrdAdatto.com.
ByrdAdatto is providing this podcast as a public service. This podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast does not constitute legal advice, nor does it establish an attorney-client relationship. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by ByrdAdatto. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Please consult with an attorney on your legal issues.